The airport was unusually busy that morning. Travelers bustled through the terminals, dragging suitcases behind them, checking screens for gate numbers and hurrying toward their flights. Amid the crowd, a young black pilot stood quietly, holding her pilot's logbook in a small bag. She had been scheduled for a flight that morning, but it wasn't the one she was hoping to fly. She had worked tirelessly for years to reach this level, learning every detail about aircraft navigation and safety. She had earned her place in the cockpit, but today felt different. Today she sensed that her skills were about to be tested in a way she hadn't expected. The morning sun glimmered through the large windows of the terminal, reflecting off polished floors and brightening the faces of travelers. Children clung to their parents' hands, excited and nervous, while business people scrolled through their emails preparing for the day ahead. The pilot walked calmly through the terminal, her steps measured and confident. She had faced skepticism before. She had faced doubt and discrimination, both subtle and overt, from people who questioned whether she belonged in the cockpit. But she had always let her actions speak louder than words. She knew her worth, and she carried herself with quiet assurance. As she approached the gate for her assigned flight, she noticed unusual activity. Several airport staff were gathered near the plane, talking in low, urgent voices. The flight crew, normally calm and methodical, appeared tense. She approached them, hoping to understand what was happening. The closer she got, the clearer it became that something was wrong. There had been a technical issue with the aircraft, one that required immediate attention. The regular pilots were struggling to identify the problem, and the passengers were beginning to notice the delay. She stepped forward, ready to offer assistance, but an airport staff member quickly intercepted her. The man's tone was firm, almost dismissive. "You need to wait outside," he said, pointing toward the terminal. "This is being handled." The pilot paused, taking a deep breath. She had encountered dismissive attitudes before, but this time it stung differently. She knew she had the knowledge and skill to help, but she was being told to step aside because of appearances. She looked back at the plane, the crew inside, and the anxious passengers boarding. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. There was a problem that needed solving, and she knew she could make a difference. Instead of arguing, she stepped to the side, observing quietly. Her eyes scanned the cockpit windows, noting the movements of the pilots and the gestures of the crew. She could see the frustration in their faces and the tension in their hands. It was clear that the situation required calm thinking, precision, and someone willing to take control. She reviewed the scenario in her mind, thinking through every possible solution. Years of training had prepared her for this exact type of challenge, and she was ready, even if no one knew it yet. Passengers began to murmur among themselves, noticing the delay and growing uneasy. Some checked their watches anxiously, while others called family members to explain the holdup. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, uncertainty, and a quiet frustration that could easily turn into panic if not managed properly. From her vantage point, the pilot could feel the collective energy of the airport shifting, the tension building as every second passed. She remained composed, letting her observation guide her next move. She remembered the countless hours spent in flight simulators, where instructors had put her through emergency scenarios that tested her knowledge, composure, and decision-making. She recalled the lessons on staying calm under pressure, thinking several steps ahead, and making decisive choices when lives depended on them. All of that preparation was meant for moments like this. And now, even though she was being told to wait outside, she felt a surge of determination. She would not let hesitation or doubt dictate her actions. The airport staff continued to confer, the voices low but urgent. The pilot noticed small details that others might miss. The subtle flicker of an indicator light, the slight hesitation in a co-pilot's hand, the way the ground crew moved in response to instructions. Each detail painted a picture of a situation that was tense but not yet critical. She analyzed every movement, every sound, and every expression, preparing herself to act when the opportunity arose. Minutes stretched, each one feeling longer than the last. The pilot remained patient but alert, aware that the situation could escalate at any moment. She observed the interaction between the pilots, noting their attempts to troubleshoot the issue. She could sense their frustration growing, but she also recognized their competence. These were trained professionals, but even the most skilled can face moments of uncertainty. She kept this in mind, understanding that her role, if allowed, would be to guide and support, not to confront or undermine. A small crowd of passengers began to form near the gate, asking questions and expressing concern. Flight attendants tried to reassure them, but the delay was becoming noticeable. The pilot's attention shifted briefly to the people affected by the situation. She understood that her responsibility extended beyond the technical problem. It included the safety, comfort, and confidence of everyone on board. Her mind raced through scenarios, considering how she could step in without causing disruption, yet ensuring that the right decisions were made. She thought back to her early days in aviation, remembering the instructors who had pushed her beyond her limits, the mentors who had encouraged her to persevere, and the colleagues who had doubted her abilities simply because of who she was. Each memory fueled her resolve. She reminded herself that skill, knowledge, and courage were not defined by appearances, and she had proved that repeatedly. Now the moment had arrived to demonstrate it again, quietly but decisively. As she waited, she also considered the human side of the story unfolding. Every passenger, every crew member, every staff member had their own fears, expectations, and pressures. She felt empathy for the people who were anxious, frustrated, or confused. Her calm presence was her way of contributing even while waiting. She reminded herself that leadership often begins with observation and understanding, not just immediate action. She remained silent, poised, and ready, knowing that her time to step forward would come. The sun climbed higher, casting shadows across the tarmac and highlighting the sleek lines of the aircraft. Engines hummed quietly and the faint smell of jet fuel lingered in the air. The airport had a rhythm of its own, a mix of controlled chaos and meticulous order. In this environment, the pilot felt at home. She thrived in situations that demanded focus, skill, and presence of mind. The challenge ahead was significant, but she was prepared to meet it with grace and competence. Finally, the moment arrived when hesitation and uncertainty reached a tipping point. The crew inside the cockpit had tried multiple solutions, yet the technical issue persisted. The airport staff exchanged worried glances, and the tension in the air was palpable. The pilot knew she could not remain on the sidelines any longer. Every fiber of her training and experience was calling her to act. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and moved toward the cockpit with quiet determination. She was about to step into a situation that would test her abilities and courage. A moment where preparation and bravery would intersect in a way that could change everything. The moment she stepped toward the cockpit, the atmosphere shifted slightly. The crew inside, who had been struggling and exchanging frustrated looks, noticed her presence through the open cockpit door. Their expressions showed a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and relief. She did not let herself be distracted by the subtle doubt in their eyes. She had faced situations like this before, and she knew that confidence, calmness, and precision could speak louder than words. She introduced herself briefly, explaining that she was a trained pilot, familiar with the type of aircraft they were working on. Her voice was steady, clear, and calm. The cockpit fell quiet for a moment as they processed her words. One of the senior pilots glanced at her, measuring whether to allow her involvement. She understood the hesitation and simply remained patient, her gaze steady and reassuring. In a few seconds, that subtle pause became the turning point. They nodded, allowing her to enter and assess the situation. Her heart did not race, but her mind was alert, focused on the task ahead. Inside the cockpit, the environment was a mix of blinking lights, gauges, and electronic panels. The pilots were clearly tense, hands hovering over switches and controls, trying multiple approaches to fix the technical issue. She scanned the instruments, quickly identifying anomalies that indicated a minor electrical problem affecting the communication system. It was a fixable issue, but it required calm hands, careful coordination, and quick thinking. She mentally mapped out the steps she needed to take, aware that each decision would impact not only the crew but every passenger on the plane. She began by speaking calmly to the pilots, explaining what she observed. Her voice carried authority but was not forceful. She offered a simple suggestion to reroute the electrical circuits temporarily to isolate the fault. One of the co-pilots hesitated, uncertain if this step was safe. She reassured him, showing the calculations and reasoning behind the move. Slowly, the tension in the cockpit eased as her instructions guided the crew through a solution they had overlooked in their initial panic. It was a delicate balance, taking control without overwhelming the team, guiding without undermining. She executed it flawlessly. As they worked together to stabilize the systems, she noticed the subtle changes in the behavior of the crew. Their shoulders relaxed slightly, their breathing slowed, and a sense of confidence began to replace their frustration. Passengers outside were still unaware of the full gravity of the technical issue, though the delay had caught their attention. Flight attendants moved quietly among them, offering reassurance and updates. But the calming presence in the cockpit was just as vital. She understood that people sense calm authority even if they cannot see it directly. Minutes stretched as the crew and she coordinated efforts to troubleshoot and repair the problem. The process required precision, patience, and careful timing. She communicated clearly, breaking down technical instructions into simple, actionable steps. Even under the stress of the situation, she maintained a steady rhythm, methodically checking each system and confirming results. Her expertise shone through not in arrogance but in quiet competence that reassured everyone in the room. As she worked, she noticed the subtle signs of strain on the co-pilots and ground crew. Eyes flicked nervously toward instruments, hands trembled slightly over switches, and murmurs of concern filled the small space. She recognized these signs immediately, understanding that fear and uncertainty can cloud judgment. She encouraged them, offered gentle guidance, and made sure each decision was informed, careful, and precise. Her calm approach allowed the crew to regain focus, reminding them that clear thinking is the best response to high-pressure situations. The tension in the cockpit was mirrored by the passengers outside, who now began to show impatience and curiosity. Children tugged at their parents' sleeves, and some adults glanced repeatedly at the boarding screens. She knew that the solution had to be both swift and thorough. Speed without accuracy could make things worse, but hesitation could increase anxiety and risk. She found the balance, guiding the crew through the steps that would restore the aircraft's stability and ensure safety for everyone on board. As she rerouted the circuits and checked communication lines, she kept her voice low but firm, explaining each move to the pilots beside her. Her clarity helped prevent mistakes, reduce tension, and created a sense of shared purpose. Slowly, the cockpit transformed from a place of uncertainty to a space of focused action. She could feel the subtle shift in energy, panic giving way to confidence, hesitation replaced by careful precision. Every step was deliberate, every action calculated, and every decision guided by experience. Outside, the airport staff watched anxiously as the situation evolved. They had initially doubted her capability because of appearances, but now they began to notice the calm authority she exuded. Even passengers waiting in line could feel the subtle difference in the atmosphere, sensing that someone competent was handling the problem. It was a quiet form of reassurance, but one that made a significant impact. Her presence alone created stability, and her actions would soon confirm it. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, yet every movement and decision was intentional. She checked each system multiple times, ensuring the temporary fixes would hold and that the aircraft was safe to operate. The pilots beside her followed instructions carefully, regaining confidence in their own abilities as she guided them. The cooperation became seamless, a silent partnership forged under pressure, united by a shared goal of safety and resolution. Finally, she gave the signal that the systems were stable. The co-pilots checked their instruments, and a collective sense of relief washed over the cockpit. The passengers outside, still unaware of the technical problem's severity, would soon be able to board and travel safely. She remained focused until the last confirmation, understanding that vigilance must remain until every detail is secured. Her calm determination had turned a potentially chaotic situation into a controlled and manageable one. As the team completed the final checks, she took a moment to breathe and observe. The crew, once tense and frustrated, now exhibited a quiet confidence. She had not only helped solve a technical problem, but had also restored composure and focus to the entire team. The experience reminded her of why she had pursued aviation, not for recognition but for the ability to make a difference when it truly mattered. Her actions had an immediate impact, ensuring safety and stability for everyone involved. With the technical issue resolved, the co-pilots, and she began the final procedures to prepare the aircraft for departure. Each step was executed with precision, ensuring that all systems were functioning correctly and that the plane was ready for takeoff. She guided the crew patiently, verifying every detail and confirming that every measure had been taken. Her approach demonstrated not only skill but also empathy, understanding that fear and uncertainty can affect decision-making and performance. The atmosphere in the cockpit had changed completely. Tension had been replaced with calm efficiency, uncertainty had been replaced with confidence, and fear had been replaced with a sense of shared purpose. The passengers outside, still unaware of the crisis that had just been averted, would soon experience a smooth and safe flight, thanks to the quiet heroism unfolding behind the cockpit doors. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not from recognition or praise, but from knowing that her knowledge, composure, and courage had made a real difference. As the final checks were completed and the aircraft prepared for boarding, she stepped back briefly to observe the team. The co-pilots and ground staff exchanged nods of acknowledgement, silently recognizing her contribution. Her calm presence had guided them through a stressful and uncertain moment, restoring focus and competence. She allowed herself a quiet smile, aware that moments like these were why she had dedicated her life to aviation. The challenges, doubts, and obstacles she had faced were all worth it for moments where skill and courage could truly matter. She knew that the story of this morning was not just about technical expertise. It was about human perseverance, calm in the face of uncertainty, and the quiet power of someone willing to act when others hesitated. Her actions had demonstrated that capability and courage are not determined by appearances, but by knowledge, preparation, and the willingness to step forward when it matters most. The experience reinforced her belief in her path and her role in a profession that demands both skill and integrity. Once the immediate technical problem was under control, the pilot knew that the next challenge was equally important, calming the passengers and ensuring that everyone on board felt safe. The boarding process had been delayed, and whispers of concern had begun to spread among the travelers. She understood that fear can grow quickly in enclosed spaces like airplanes, where people are relying entirely on the crew's competence. Her mind shifted seamlessly from technical problem-solving to the human side of aviation. Knowing that both were equally crucial in this situation, she stepped out of the cockpit briefly to observe the boarding gate. Flight attendants were doing their best, but the passengers' anxiety was noticeable. Some clutched their tickets tightly, checking the departure screens repeatedly, while others exchanged worried glances or spoke quietly to companions. Children squirmed in their parents' laps, sensing the tension in the air. She approached the nearest flight attendant and spoke softly, offering guidance on how to address the passengers calmly and confidently. Together, they walked through a few key steps that would reassure everyone without causing panic. The boarding began slowly but steadily. She watched as passengers lined up, their eyes occasionally drifting toward the cockpit. Some recognized her from earlier, and their expressions shifted from uncertainty to curiosity. It was a small change, but in a high-pressure environment, every bit of reassurance counts. She moved among the staff and the passengers with quiet confidence, answering questions when asked and making sure everyone felt informed. She understood that trust can be built in moments like this simply through presence and clear communication. Once all the passengers were settled in their seats, the pilot returned to the cockpit to conduct the final checks before takeoff. The co-pilots were now fully confident in their roles, thanks to the guidance she had provided during the technical issue. The hum of the engines and the soft beeps of instruments filled the cockpit, a rhythm that indicated readiness. She methodically ran through the pre-flight checklist, ensuring that every system was functioning correctly, every switch was in the proper position, and every emergency protocol was ready. Her attention to detail was unwavering, knowing that small oversights can lead to serious consequences. The atmosphere in the cockpit was now one of focused calm. The earlier tension had dissolved into efficiency, and the crew moved with a coordinated rhythm. She spoke clearly and succinctly, confirming each action and double-checking results. The trust between her and the co-pilots had grown through shared experience, and that trust allowed them to operate as a unified team. Outside the cockpit, the passengers were settling into their seats, some still glancing toward the front of the plane, sensing the reassurance radiating from the crew. As the plane prepared to taxi to the runway, she reflected briefly on the journey that had brought her here. She had faced countless challenges to reach this level of her career, from intense training to moments of doubt imposed by others. Each obstacle had strengthened her resilience, sharpened her skills, and reinforced her belief in herself. Now standing at the forefront of a situation that demanded both technical expertise and human empathy, she felt a quiet pride. Her preparation and perseverance were proving their worth in a tangible way. The taxi to the runway was smooth but filled with anticipation. Air traffic controllers were giving instructions, and the crew responded with calm precision. Every turn of the wheel, every adjustment of the throttle, every glance at the instruments was part of a carefully orchestrated sequence. The pilot maintained her focus, aware that the final stage of takeoff was the most critical. She communicated clearly with the co-pilots, confirming every decision and ensuring that each action was coordinated. Her leadership was subtle but powerful, guiding the team without dominating them. Passengers felt the gentle motion of the plane as it moved along the tarmac. Some gripped armrests nervously while others closed their eyes in quiet anticipation. Flight attendants moved among the aisles, offering smiles and reassurance, and the overall sense of tension began to ease. The pilot's calm authority in the cockpit contributed to this environment, even if the passengers were unaware of the specifics. Confidence, she knew, is contagious, and her presence had already begun to settle nerves. As the plane reached the runway, the pilot conducted the final pre-takeoff checklist. Every system was in order. Every gauge indicated readiness, and the engines were performing perfectly. She took a deep breath, allowing a moment of stillness to focus her mind. Takeoff is always a moment of intensity, requiring absolute attention and coordination. She felt no fear, only a sense of responsibility and clarity. The passengers' safety and the success of the flight rested on the careful execution of every step, and she was fully prepared. With a final check of instruments and communication with the co-pilots, she initiated the takeoff sequence. The plane accelerated smoothly down the runway, gaining speed steadily. Passengers felt the push against their seats as the engines roared to life, and some instinctively held their breath. The pilot maintained complete control, guiding the aircraft with precision. Every movement was deliberate, every adjustment calculated, and every command communicated clearly. The transition from the runway to the sky was seamless, a testament to careful preparation and expert execution. As the plane lifted off, a sense of relief and exhilaration spread through the cockpit. The passengers, feeling the smooth ascent, began to relax, some leaning back with a deep breath, others glancing around with subtle smiles. The pilot allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, knowing that her calm focus and careful guidance had made this moment possible. She remained vigilant, aware that the first minutes of flight are crucial, but the immediate challenge had been overcome. Once the plane reached cruising altitude, she took a moment to assess the situation. All systems were stable, the co-pilots were confident, and the passengers were settling into the rhythm of the flight. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not from recognition but from knowing that her expertise and composure had ensured safety and stability. The earlier doubts, the dismissive attitudes, and the initial hesitation of others had been replaced by trust and cooperation. She had demonstrated her capability not through words, but through decisive action and calm leadership. During the flight, she reflected on the importance of empathy and understanding in leadership. The technical skills of a pilot are essential, but so is the ability to read situations, anticipate human reactions, and provide reassurance. Her actions had addressed both the mechanical and human aspects of the challenge, creating an environment where safety, trust, and confidence could coexist. She understood that moments like these define careers, but more importantly, they define character. As the plane cruised smoothly, she allowed herself to observe the passengers. Some were reading, some were talking quietly, and some were gazing out of the windows, absorbing the view from above. The anxiety that had filled the boarding area was now replaced by calm, curiosity, and comfort. Her role, though largely unseen by those outside the cockpit, had a profound impact. She had not only ensured a safe flight, but had also contributed to the passengers' sense of security and well-being. The remainder of the flight proceeded without incident, but the pilot remained attentive. She understood that vigilance is a continuous responsibility, requiring awareness, precision, and readiness to act at any moment. Her focus never wavered, and her coordination with the co-pilots remained seamless. The shared experience of managing the earlier crisis had created a bond among the crew, fostering trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. By the time the plane began its descent, the passengers were calm, relaxed and unaware of the full extent of the technical challenge that had been resolved before takeoff. The pilot guided the aircraft gently, maintaining smooth communication with the crew and preparing for a safe landing. Her approach to leadership, combining technical expertise with human empathy, had turned a potentially stressful situation into a controlled, safe, and even reassuring experience for everyone on board. As the runway approached, she executed the landing with precision and care. The plane touched down smoothly, brakes applied effectively, and every step was monitored to ensure safety. The passengers, now aware only of a routine landing, began to applaud quietly, not knowing that behind the calm execution was a story of courage, skill, and quiet determination. The pilot allowed herself a brief moment of reflection, recognizing that her actions had made a meaningful difference, not only in resolving a technical issue but in creating confidence and trust among all those present. The applause from the passengers as the plane landed was quiet, but heartfelt. It was the sort of applause given after a smooth landing, yet she knew in her mind that what had been accomplished was far beyond routine. Inside the cockpit, the co-pilots exchanged glances of appreciation and relief. They had faced a moment of uncertainty and potential danger, and now, guided by her steady hand and knowledge, the situation had been resolved flawlessly. She allowed herself a subtle smile, keeping her focus on the task at hand while quietly acknowledging the impact of her actions. The plane taxied toward the gate, the engines humming steadily. Flight attendants moved down the aisles, preparing passengers for disembarkation, ensuring everyone remained calm and organized. She monitored each system, double-checking that everything continued to function correctly. Her mind, though calm, was fully aware that even after a successful landing, vigilance was necessary. A pilot's responsibility does not end with touching the ground. It extends until everyone is safe. The plane is properly parked and all systems are secured. Passengers were stretching, collecting bags from the overhead compartments, and chatting quietly among themselves. Some were unaware of the technical issue that had delayed their flight, while others had noticed subtle signs of tension earlier, but now relaxed completely. She could sense the collective relief. Her actions, though unseen by most, had ensured that their journey remained safe and uneventful. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her skills had protected and reassured so many people. As the aircraft reached the gate, she began the shutdown procedures, moving through the checklists with methodical precision. Every switch, gauge, and system was examined carefully, confirming that all functions were operating normally. The co-pilots worked seamlessly beside her, their confidence in their own abilities restored after the guidance they had received. The teamwork that had formed in the cockpit was tangible, a product of shared experience, mutual respect, and trust forged under pressure. The doors opened, and passengers began to disembark. She observed the flow, noting those who hesitated or seemed unsure, offering gentle reassurances when necessary. Her presence, calm and composed, was a stabilizing factor for the crew and passengers alike. She understood the subtle ways in which people respond to authority and confidence. It was not about being the loudest or most assertive person in the room. It was about being present, reliable, and competent. Those qualities created trust naturally. Ground crew members approached, checking the exterior and ensuring the plane was fully secure. They glanced at her with a newfound respect, a silent acknowledgement of her competence. Some had initially doubted her ability because of appearances, but their skepticism had dissolved as they witnessed her calm authority and skillful management of the situation. She did not seek recognition, but she allowed herself a moment to feel pride in the quiet acknowledgement from those who had underestimated her. Passengers continued to exit the plane, expressing gratitude to the flight attendants and crew. Some asked questions about the flight, curious about the seamless landing after a delayed departure. She remained in the cockpit, ensuring that everything was completed correctly before finally standing and stretching. The crew had regained confidence and the passengers were safe and calm. The sense of accomplishment was subtle but powerful, rooted in the knowledge that she had made a real difference in a high-stakes situation. Once the plane was fully secured, she joined the co-pilots and ground crew to debrief briefly. They spoke about the technical problem, the steps taken to resolve it, and the coordination required to manage both the aircraft and the passengers. She listened carefully, offering insights and reinforcing lessons learned. The conversation was professional, but there was an undercurrent of mutual respect and acknowledgement. The team recognized that this experience had strengthened their skills and prepared them for future challenges. After the debrief, she took a moment to reflect on the events of the morning. She thought about the initial dismissal at the gate, the skepticism of others, and the challenge that lay ahead when she stepped into the cockpit. Each step had required confidence, knowledge, and composure. She realized that true leadership is often tested in moments of unexpected difficulty, and that the ability to remain calm, make decisions, and guide others is what defines a professional in any high-stakes field. She also thought about the human side of the experience. The passengers, though mostly unaware of the crisis, had relied on her and the crew to navigate a potentially dangerous situation. Their safety, comfort, and confidence had been in her hands, and she had taken that responsibility seriously. The ability to balance technical skill with empathy and awareness of human emotions is what makes an effective pilot. She felt a renewed sense of purpose knowing that her actions had upheld that standard. The airport staff approached once more, offering congratulations and acknowledgement of her role in resolving the situation. Their initial hesitation had been replaced by respect. They recognized that her calm authority, technical expertise, and leadership had been instrumental in turning a tense situation into a controlled and safe outcome. She accepted their words with quiet humility, focusing on the fact that her primary responsibility had always been safety and competence rather than recognition. As she stepped away from the aircraft, she noticed the passengers moving through the terminal, some chatting about their flights, some making phone calls, and others heading toward baggage claim. The sense of normalcy returning to the airport was satisfying. The challenge of the morning had been met, and order had been restored. She walked among the staff, checking briefly on each team member, ensuring that everyone was confident and prepared for the next steps. Her leadership extended beyond the cockpit, touching everyone involved in the process. She reflected on her journey to this point, the years of training, practice, and persistence that had brought her to the cockpit. Each obstacle she had faced, from skepticism to doubt, had strengthened her resolve and honed her skills. She recognized that moments like this were not just about technical ability, but about character, resilience, and the quiet determination to act when it matters most. The ability to remain calm, think clearly, and guide others effectively under pressure is what separates good professionals from great ones. As she prepared to leave the aircraft, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not for recognition or praise, but for the knowledge that she had made a difference. She had taken control of a challenging situation, guided a team, ensured the safety of passengers, and maintained calm in a high-pressure environment. Each action had been deliberate, each decision informed by experience and training, and each moment handled with care. She understood the weight of her responsibility, but also the quiet power of competence and confidence. Walking away from the plane, she allowed herself to breathe and reflect. The morning's events had been intense, challenging, and ultimately rewarding. She thought about the lessons learned, the trust earned, and the impact of her calm presence and leadership. Every challenge she had faced had prepared her for this moment, and she felt a renewed commitment to her role, to safety, and to the people who rely on her skills. She understood that true accomplishment is often quiet, measured not in applause but in the knowledge that one has acted effectively, responsibly, and with integrity. The airport was returning to its usual rhythm. Travelers moved through the terminals, staff attended to their duties, and planes prepared for the next departures. She walked through the airport quietly, aware of the normalcy that had been restored. Her focus remained on the human and technical aspects of her work, recognizing that both were inseparable in her profession. The morning had tested her in ways both expected and unexpected, and she had met those challenges with calm competence and quiet courage. She paused briefly to observe the people around her, reflecting on the importance of empathy, communication, and trust. Leadership is not just about technical skill. It is about understanding the people you serve and guiding them with confidence, clarity, and care. The passengers, crew, and staff had all experienced a moment of tension that could have escalated, yet it had been transformed into an example of effective problem-solving and human cooperation. She felt a quiet pride in being part of that transformation, knowing that her actions had made a tangible difference in the lives of those around her. The plane was safely parked at the gate, passengers moving steadily toward the terminal. The pilot took a moment to let the tension of the morning settle. She had guided the crew through a technical issue, ensured passengers felt safe, and maintained calm throughout the high-pressure situation. Though the applause of the passengers was minimal, the satisfaction she felt inside was immense. It came from knowing she had done her job well and had impacted the lives of those on board positively. She walked slowly through the terminal, observing people reconnecting with loved ones, checking phones or heading toward their next destinations. There was a sense of relief in the air, an invisible gratitude from the passengers who had experienced a flight that could have been stressful but was instead calm and safe. She reflected on the morning's events, thinking about how quickly situations can change and how important it is to remain prepared, composed, and compassionate. As she walked past the airport staff, some of them acknowledged her with nods and small smiles. There was no need for words. They had seen her in action and understood her role in the smooth resolution of the crisis. She appreciated the silent recognition, a quiet validation that her presence and competence mattered. Leadership, she thought, often works best when it is subtle, guiding others without creating tension or demanding attention. The co-pilots approached her as the last passengers left the terminal. Their expressions were a mixture of gratitude and admiration. They thanked her for her guidance and expertise, acknowledging that her calm and methodical approach had made all the difference. She accepted their thanks with modesty, understanding that while recognition was gratifying, the true reward lay in knowing that she had helped maintain safety and trust. Their respect was earned in action, not requested. She paused to consider the passengers who had been unaware of the technical issue and the challenges she had managed. Many of them would go about their day thinking it had been just another routine flight. That thought made her smile quietly. Sometimes the most important achievements are invisible to others, yet they carry profound consequences. Her role was not to seek applause but to ensure safety, competence, and calm. That was the essence of her work and the measure of her success. She walked toward the staff area, taking a moment to debrief informally with the airport crew. They discussed what had occurred, the steps taken to manage the aircraft, and how to improve processes in the future. She offered her perspective calmly, sharing insights and lessons from her experience without criticism or judgment. Her approach reinforced collaboration and mutual understanding, showing that teamwork, communication, and empathy are as important as technical skill in aviation. While speaking with the staff, she reflected on her journey to this point. The path had not been easy. There had been moments of doubt, subtle discrimination, and challenges that required resilience. Every challenge had strengthened her knowledge, skills, and confidence. It had taught her patience, perseverance, and the quiet power of competence. Today's events were a culmination of all those lessons, a reminder that preparation and determination enable one to handle unexpected crises with grace and efficiency. She thought about young people who might look at her and wonder if they could achieve similar success. The aviation world, like many professional fields, often carries visible and invisible barriers. She hoped that her actions would serve as a reminder that skill, courage, and determination define one's ability, not appearances or assumptions. Being competent and calm under pressure can inspire others to pursue their own paths and overcome challenges. As she concluded the debrief with the airport crew, she turned her attention back to the aircraft. She walked along the side of the plane, visually inspecting its exterior with the ground crew. Every detail mattered, from tire pressure to fuel levels, and she verified that everything was in proper order. This careful attention to detail reflected her commitment to safety and excellence. It was not just about reacting to problems but proactively ensuring that future operations were smooth and secure. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting warm light across the tarmac and illuminating the aircraft in a way that made it seem almost serene. She paused for a moment, taking in the scene, appreciating the calm after the storm. The earlier tension and urgency had transformed into a quiet, controlled environment. Passengers had departed, the crew had completed their tasks, and the airport resumed its normal rhythm. The sense of order and preparedness was satisfying, a reminder that diligence and calm can overcome uncertainty. She reflected on the human element of her work. Aviation is more than technical skills and procedures. It is about understanding and managing human emotions, expectations, and fears. Passengers had depended on her and the crew for reassurance, calm, and safe travel. Crew members had relied on her guidance and composure to navigate uncertainty. Her actions had impacted many lives, demonstrating that empathy, communication, and leadership are essential complements to technical knowledge. She thought about the morning's initial dismissal when she had been told to wait outside. That moment had stung, but it had not shaken her. She had remained patient and confident, knowing that her preparation and expertise would speak for themselves. Stepping into the cockpit and taking control of the situation had allowed her to demonstrate her abilities without confrontation or conflict. It was a subtle lesson in resilience and quiet leadership. The best way to respond to doubt is through action and competence. The airport staff began their final checks and preparations for the next flights. She moved through the area, ensuring the next team members understood the situation and had what they needed to operate smoothly. Her guidance was calm, clear, and practical, reinforcing confidence without creating stress. She understood that leadership is as much about enabling others as it is about performing one's own role. Providing support, sharing knowledge, and maintaining calm are essential elements of effective teamwork. As she finally made her way to the lounge area, she took a deep breath, allowing herself to reflect on the morning's events. She had faced a technical problem, guided a team, ensured passenger safety, and maintained calm under pressure. Each step had been deliberate, informed by knowledge, experience, and empathy. The satisfaction she felt came not from recognition or praise, but from knowing she had acted effectively when it mattered most. She thought about the future, the flights yet to come, and the challenges that might arise. She knew that every day could bring unexpected situations and that preparation, composure, and skill would always be essential. She felt confident that she was ready for whatever challenges awaited. The morning had reinforced her belief in herself, her abilities, and the quiet power of calm, competent action. She reflected on the passengers she had helped that day, the crew she had guided, and the lessons she had learned herself. The experience had reminded her that leadership is about more than authority. It is about presence, awareness, skill, and empathy. It is about responding calmly under pressure, guiding others with care, and taking responsibility when it matters most. She felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that her actions had created a positive impact that extended beyond technical success to human reassurance and trust. Walking through the terminal, she noticed travelers moving confidently toward their destinations, staff managing their duties efficiently, and the airport operating smoothly. The sense of normalcy and order was comforting. She understood that her role had contributed to this environment, and that her calm, competent actions had ensured safety and confidence for everyone involved. It was a quiet victory, one measured not in applause but in the smooth continuation of life and routine. Finally, as she prepared to leave the airport for the day, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment and clarity. The morning had been challenging, testing her skills, judgment, and leadership. She had met those challenges with calmness, competence, and empathy. Her actions had ensured safety, inspired confidence, and demonstrated that true capability is measured by action, skill, and character, rather than appearances or assumptions. She walked out into the sunlight, ready to face the next journey, knowing that she had made a difference when it mattered most.